So yeah, as we said, we're gonna watch Mew2king ranking the top 10 greatest melee players of all time, and yeah, we're gonna watch the video, make our own comments, see how much I agree slash disagree with. But yeah, let's get started.
I'm going to be talking about who I think the GOATs of Melee are in order.
Oh, starting with a famous set.
Melee GOATs of all time, or just you could say the top 10 all-time Melee players. This considers pretty much the entire time span, since Melee is released.
Actually, I just gotta add before we get started for real. That set against STJ, I was like, I wanted to win that set so badly. My Android and Yolas, like my two of my siblings, a great friend of mine, and my girlfriend was all there, and we're gonna have a road trip after Genesis. So I was like, I basically told him in advance that if it goes badly this tournament, I'm not gonna be the happiest guy on that road trip. So you better hope I win. And that was such a scary moment, but it all turned out good in the end.
Release, or maybe like a year after its release or so, since no one really knew how to play the game the first year, and it was like no tournaments, up until pretty much present day. First, I'm going to give an honorable mention to PC Chris, because I think he's like number 11. PC Chris was a really, really good top player back in the past. His earliest documented tourneys that I could find was like January 2005. He started a little bit before me, and he was just an extremely good player. And during MLG 2006 season, he actually won the first and the last MLG. He didn't win the ones in between, but he won the first and last. And then during the year 2007, even though there was a big gap between us overall, I still consider him by results to be the number 2 player in 2007.
I think it's cool that Mew2king gives like an honorable mention. I know he's like more supposed to be like a top 10, but like PC Chris, obviously amazing player in the early days of Melee, but even like way past his prime, he was still a very solid player. He still made it, decently far at like pound 4, I remember. And yeah, like it was like a lot of old games with PC Chris, very good. Like he was like, how do you say, his style was very appreciated by people, like especially when like he was playing against Ken and stuff. Like yeah, he is like, I guess like a little bit like people look at Mango these days. Like he wanted to like pressure people a lot. Didn't he say like that quote in the Smash documentary or something, that given enough pressure everyone cracks eventually, something like that? And it was very true for him, very true for him.
However, shortly after that, after Brawl came out, he didn't really replicate results far into 2008 and onwards, which, since his legacy was not as long as it could have been, that is why I'm ranking him number 11. But I also want to give a shout, because I feel like he's around that spot, maybe very slightly higher. Next would be number 10. I give this to Plup. Plup was a really good Samus in the year 2014. He didn't really win any big turns, though, and then he picked Sheik. He picked up Sheik, and he started doing better. Like, even though I beat him like at 6-0 at Smash and Splash the first time, he actually ended up beating everybody else, and then even then he just kept improving since then. Like, he just kept getting better and better every few months. For notable wins, he won a DreamHack in like I think it was like 2017 maybe, and then he also won a Genesis, which is also really good. And then at the most recent tourney,
yeah, it's like with Plup, it's like he still has obviously so much more he can do. Like he still have hopefully many years left, and he has won like a super major in the newer era, which honestly that Genesis, like everyone was there, and he beat like me, Mango, and Hungry Box twice to win that tournament. So it's like around the time I would say like Melee was at its most competitive. Like I'm probably biased, but I feel like probably something like 2014 to 18 was like probably the most, like the hardest time era. Like that 4-year span was probably the hardest to win in my opinion. And yes, as I said, I'm probably biased, but yeah, it was very impressive for Plup. And honestly, like when Ultimate came out and he played less, we saw him like declining a bit due to like not practicing. But yeah, at Summit we saw him like being kind of back to his former self, beating a lot of good players like Sane, Mango, taking a set of Hungry Box. So, oh, he beat Axe too. He probably beat a few more players. But yeah, like a lot of these like ranking lists, like with Keys, a lot of people discuss these type of things in like whether it's Melee, other esports, or regular sports. It's like it's so subjective how you count like different eras, consistency versus peaks and stuff. But I guess like that's why the discussions never end, because it really depends on how you value things. But I mean, yeah, Plup should at least be top 10, at least top 10.
Early 2020, after having a really bad 2019, mainly because of focusing on Ultimate, he got second at the most recent sim. So it's another situation where I'm trying to think, okay, you did really good during this time period, basically, but him starting late is why I don't have him higher. Next would be Azen. So this is an interesting topic, because like not many people know about this stuff, but Azen was like one of the original people who was like playing pretty much before everyone. He started around the same time, maybe even before people like Ken and Chudat, and he has like a documented tourney win from 2002, but I really think the timeline should start about August 2003. There was a tournament called TO Tournament Go in 2003, in August of 2003, and that tourney was notorious for having items on. So there was items on, and there was like a lot of...
It's actually crazy like how the Melee like rule sets involved items back in the day. It's actually crazy. And stages like were so different until like 2010 or so. I was actually one of the people that like really tried to push for the stage list we see these days. I remember going to like Genesis 1, and it was so many weird stages. And some people might say like, oh, but you counterpick Mute City. I was like, of course I do, because I run the risk that everyone counterpicks like Pokefloats or Corneria and shit. I guess beside Loon Spectra, no one did, but since I lost game 1, I always had to assume. Like I would clearly have agreed to like non-bullshit stages, but yeah, it was very weird. Like going into Genesis 1 for me, I was actually more afraid of the rule set than any player. That's how bad I felt about the rule set. But I mean, around this time, we also got like one of like the like super old school players in Sweden. Like he came back and hosted tournaments, and a lot of these stages kept happening in Sweden too. But eventually we also like changed. I think we changed slightly before the US. But yeah, it was like super scary. But yeah, Asen in 9th. We haven't heard entire reasoning, but spontaneously I kind of feel like I probably would put Plup higher. But again, I probably put more like value, like extra value on like, newer stuff. I feel like before, I don't know. Like these super early days, like of course it matters, but on top of my head, I feel like Asen, he didn't win too many like super majors. I know it was like one tournament he was like destroying everyone. That was like pretty much the equivalent of a super major for that era. But yeah, let's keep hearing Mew2king's entire reasoning.
Whack stages in addition to that. In addition to not many people really knowing how to play the game. So when you factor all these together, items being the biggest reason, of course, after this tournament, then the rule set started to become like, oh, everyone agrees this is not a good rule set, and then items started being off, and the stage list got cut down tremendously, and on from that point onward. So in my mind, this is around when the timeline should start. Anyway, at that tourney, like Ken won, and Azen ended up getting 4th, but then Azen did well at pretty much everything before that. Pretty much everything after that, and he also did well before it. He was considered the best East Coast player from, I'd say, 2002, although honestly 2002 and doesn't really matter. So I'll just say pretty much 2003 until some point in 2006, where in 2006 it was like a lot of people could have been best in the world at different points. Like I'd say Ken was the best during at least the first half of 2006, but like it was highly debatable because it was constantly switching in the year 2006. But I'll say he was the best from like 2002 to 2000, some point in 2006 where he started this lot. So that's a pretty good legacy. Well, that's not best in the world though. That's just best in East Coast. So he was never considered best in the world. However, he did win majors. Like he did win 1 or 2 MLGs in 2006, for example. And he was still like a really good player. Then I will have Chudat at number 8.
All right, so I mean, yeah, I respect Azen's legacy, but I probably would put him in 10th. Yeah, it feels like in terms of peak, it's a similar peak to Plup, but he didn't compete at the very highest level for as long as Plop, and in a less competitive era. And part of his legacy was like also with like very bad rule sets, which obviously is not his fault, but it's also like a different skill set, if you want to put it that way, than we value, you know, for 95% of Melee's, you know, history. Yeah, like of course, like it will always be a bit unfair comparing, you know, different eras and stuff, because you can't really impact like everyone else and, you know, rule sets. Like maybe you can impact it to some degree, trying to use your like influence and like try to push things for the better. But yeah, I probably would swap these two around. But you can make an argument. You can make an argument. But yeah, I probably would put Plop above Asin. All right, so let's see. Chudat, number 8.
Now, Chudat started around like the same time as Asin. He was always, not always, but for most of the time Asin played, Chudat was pretty much slightly behind Asin. However, Chu also has something also has something that Asin doesn't have, and that's the fact that he came back in 2000, like the year 2017, and actually came back strong, beating me in multiple sets, beating Leffen 3-2 before the 2-3 run back for, you know, the famous Shrine UCF tournament thing. He beat Mango in a set, even four-stocking him on Game 5, and he's taken games off Armada. And there's probably even more really good things he did that I just don't remember off the top of my head. Basically, besides myself, he was pretty much the only old-school player to be good in the old times and then come back and still be really good in the new age.
What about me? Why am I not counted? I know I didn't break out as early as Mew2king, but I was still like really good from 07 forward, which is like a year after Mew2king. I know Europe didn't count back then before I went to Genesis 1. I almost feel a bit offended. Almost a bit offended, but I'll excuse Mew2king. But yeah, I didn't break out as early as Mew2king or Chudat. But I mean, I think Chudat. Yeah, no, I know we're only on 8, but he basically said that him and Chudat were the only ones from like the early era, and I feel like both me and Mango honestly should be included in that, since we're both like really good from like 07. But yeah, no, Chudat so far, we haven't listened to an entire reasoning, but I think, yeah, Chu for number 8, yeah, I think it's a reasonable pick too. But yeah, Chudat's been really good for, like, yeah, pretty much Melee's entire lifespan. Like, he had a few years when he didn't really enter much, but even when he didn't enter much, he was still, like, a solid player. And as Mew2king mentioned, like, in, you know, more recent years, like, he got, like, many wins against Mango. He got some wins against Mew2king. He took that set against Leffen. I know it was, like, replayed and stuff, but honestly, I think it should, like, count for something at least. So, and honestly, Ju was also the only Ice Climbers that ever took games against me. He was the only Ices that ever took games against me. And he took 3 games. I know it's not set wins, but I think, like, it's something that separates him from other Ice Climbers too. Like, to be fair, he did get more chances than probably any other ICs, but still, he took, like, 1 game every other set or something. And some other ICs, yeah, they combined, they took 0. And didn't he, I think he won, like, yeah, he won, like, Pound 2. He still, you know, got in good placements. He also won, like, a Battle of BC, beating Mew2king. So it's also a pretty good win. And then that DreamHack Austin, he got 2nd, beating Mango and Mew2king. Brought Hungerbox to Game 5. So, yeah.
He was the only
He did beat Hungerbox at Zenith 2012. Which was, or was it 13? No, it was 12. It was 12.
Every other old school player,
which was like when he didn't even like enter that much.
Now, yeah, part of the reason is wobbling and whatnot, yeah. But, you know, I still got to give credit to the fact that he actually did it. So, yeah, I want to give him credit for that. I think he should actually be 8th or higher because of this. After this, I will have PPMD as number 7.
All right, so, yeah, Chudat, yeah, that wraps up the reasoning for Judat. Yeah, I think eighth is fair. Yeah, I probably would put him at eighth. I think Plup, like I personally would have Plup and Asin switched or swapped, and I feel like Plup very very soon would or most likely will surpass Judat. But for now, I would say that Judat in eighth. I agree with. But yeah, Plup high chance to climb up that one spot super soon.
PPMD obviously it goes without saying that he's one of the Smash gods. Oh, I also want to mention that number 7 and higher have been best in the world for at least one point in time. Like they were considered maybe not rank 1 on a yearly scale, but considered to be the best player at least during like a 7-month time period at some point in time. Anyway, so PPMD is my number 7, and among all the gods, he probably had the shortest career. So that's pretty much the main reason for him being down here. Like theoretically, if he had started sooner and continued later, like he could be higher. But when you count all time, you're obviously going to be punished for not competing in several years, obviously. But anyway, during the times that he was competing, like he was doing really well from like 2010, 2011, especially in 2011 when he won like Pound 5.
Oh, no Anza text. That was before people started doing that a lot.
And then during the first, I'd say the first 4 months, no, the first half year of 2014, it was like it was me, PPMD, and Mango who were contenders for the best in the world during the first 6 months based on results. Me, PPMD, and Mango who were half year of 2014, it was like a
Oh yeah.
It was me, PPMD, and Mango who were contenders for the best in the world during the first 6 months based on results. I had more results, but PP had the strongest results.
Like 2014, like that I disagree with Mew2king. Mew2king, it was more late 2013. Late 2013, Mew2king was doing really good. Also, 2013 overall, Mew2king was doing really good. And I know Mew2king was seeded first for Apex 2014. But for 2014, PPMD didn't enter that much, but he won Apex 2014. It was like some smaller event where he beat Mew2king. I believe it was like Marth Dittos and Marth Sheik that time. And then PPMD won Skatar. So he didn't have too many events. But no, I disagree there. Maybe Mew2king is like misremembering and thinks about like 2013. Because if you add like late results 2013 and don't count like, Skatar, but you count like the time period before that, then you can make an argument, right? Has PPMD done enough to be like considered like better? But if you only count 2014, no, then I would say PPMD was like best in the first half, but Manga was best in the second half. So, yeah. It's probably like something along these lines. Mew2king actually meant. He just didn't clarify it entirely.
He won 2 Apexes, and he did good at pretty much all the Apexes, and then he also came back and did good at SKTR. So he had periods where he was never ranked number 1 as far as I know, but he was considered the best player in the world during certain time periods. The next person will be Leffen.
Alright, so PPMD 7th. Yeah, I agree with that choice. And as Mew2king said, like, I 100% agree with the reasoning. Compared to like the other players up here, yeah, he has a much shorter time span as like a top player. But I mean, still the fact that he was like number 1, like people, even though he wasn't like ranked number 1 on Mayhem, which I, by the way, sometimes think is a pretty flawed system and people put way too much value on that. And some people probably will ask like, oh wait, why do you say that? Like hypothetically, you can have someone win like all 3 super majors in a year and win 20 majors in that year and lose 0 sets, and they are ranked number 1. And then you can have someone be number 1 with the tiniest of margins and technically win 0 super majors and still be ranked number 1. So it's like, yeah, I think people put way too much value on like that number. Of course it matters, but like you have to look into all the details, and that's like something very few people do, especially when you look at like various like social media platforms. Yeah, people with like way too little knowledge and like insight, they try to portray it as they actually have like all the data. But yeah, any reasonable person would say early 2014 PPMD was the best. And that kind of like separates, as Mew2king said, like the top 7 is that even if it was not for like a super long time, they did have some time period where, people did look at, this guy is the guy to beat right now. But yeah, not a super long time for PPMD, and also like, I mean, technically with Mango not around when he was like doing his Scorp thing, like Pound 5, PPMD was like very likely looking like the best active player for sure. I mean, some people might say Mango was, but he didn't enter anything, so it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. But yeah. So yeah, PPMD, he does have some stretches, but yeah, sadly, short legacy in comparison so far. So yeah. He has potential to climb higher if he comes back, but for now, 7th place, I 100% agree with.
I don't think there's a huge gap between Leffen and PP necessarily, but I would say Leffen would be above him. Leffen started later than Dr. PP, or PPMD, whatever, but because Leffen kept playing and getting good results way after PP stopped. So and there was a point, and he wasn't ever ranked first, but he should have been during certain time periods. Like, I don't base the melee rankings necessarily off of what actually happened, because there could be biases and stuff, and a lot of the time I find it very inaccurate. For example, Leffen was not ranked first in the year 2015, and I feel based on results he should have been.
No! Okay, Mew2king, alright. I disagree with that one. What do you mean? Leffen was like number 1 for like parts, like the summer. He had like a 3-week stretch. Yeah, I think Mew2king confuses this too. Leffen won 3 tournaments in a row. CEO 2015, FC Return, and What the Fox. And that was a very impressive streak. And right there at that moment, like those 3 tournaments, then Leffen got 5th at Evo, which was, a bit, of a, bummer for him. But then he came back strong, and he won SmashCon. I wasn't there at SmashCon or HTC, but it was still like some strong performances for sure. Leffen should have been 2nd in 2015, 100%. That part I would agree with. I have no idea how Leffen ended up 3rd and Hungrybox 2nd. If you look back, it's very weird. Some people will mention that, but Leffen got 2 9th places, but one of those 9th places was because Mango was DQ'd from winners. Him and a few others, I believe Hacks and someone else, doesn't really matter. But they were late to a tournament due to like traffic or whatever it was. It doesn't matter what the reasoning was. End result was that they were DQ'd from winners but not losers. And then Mango, he played Leffen early in losers because Leffen lost to SFAT. So even though Leffen got that 9th place, yes, it showed 9th, but that also shows how much you need to look into like who did you lose to. Sometimes you can get like a higher placement, but your losses are worse and your wins are not as good. And I think people tunnel visioned so much in that 9th place. He also got 9th at DreamHack Winter at the very end of the year, which probably created like a lot of recency bias. Leffen he had lost his visa like 2 months prior to this, so it's probably a high possibility he was rusty and not as practiced. But of course, like it still counts, right? But yeah, I think the fact that Leffen did bad at the last tournament of the year and another 9th place, and people didn't look into like the rest. But if you look at the 2015. If you go back and look at both Leffen and Hungrybox's results, it's very obvious that Leffen should have been higher. Like, I would say it's a stretch to put Hungrybox 2nd that year. But yeah, it ended up being the case. I mean, you could make a small argument for it because he didn't have quite as low lows. But even then, I feel like it's pretty obvious. Leffen had so many tournaments he won that year. As we said, he had CEO, What the Fox, FC Return, HTC, SmashCon, Beast 5. I think that's it. So, yeah. But he should not have been first because I did outplace Leffen at Apex, 2nd compared to 3rd, and then I won Evo and Big House. So, I was in grand finals of all 3 super majors that year and won 2 of them. And I did win a summit. I did win I'm Not Yelling. I won MVG Sandstorm. It was like a lot of tournaments. So, I think Mew2king confused that part. Like, I would correct it and say that Leffen, he was the guy to beat the summer of 2015 leading up to EVO. Going into EVO, Leffen was the guy to beat. So right there, like that 3-week period, I would say he was the best. Then EVO maybe put me back into, the conversation, because before Leffen's streak, I won I'm Not Yelling and MVG Sandstorm back-to-back weekends. And then Leffen won 3, and then I won 1. So it was like 3-3 between me and Leffen over that time period. Maybe I won something in Europe in that time period too. I actually think I did. Let me think. Yeah, I think it was like a tournament, Drummelon in Norway, when I beat Leffen after Sandstorm. So I think it was actually like... So in that time period, like if you combine all of that, you could clearly make a case for either one of us, but that beginning of the summer leading up to EVO, I would say it was fair to say Leffen was like number 1 in that time period. But I think Mew2king confused the rest. No, that was 2014, Jeffsor. That was my second that was like my second bigger tournament back in 2014. Yeah. Like 2014, I did lose to Leffen quite a bit early on when I just came back after a year break.
First or second, probably first, based on his results during the year 2015. And he still came back strong and has been doing well lately. Like he won EVO 2018, he won SmashCon. Those are some of his better wins recently. Like basically just a slightly stronger, more recent version of PPMDs. Everyone in the top 5 has been considered to be the best in the world for at least 1 or 2, if not, at least 1 or 2 years, if not more. So that's also really important. So number 5, I'm going to rank Ken.
So yeah, in general, I agree with Leffen's placement. But yeah, it was like some inaccuracies. With like 2015 especially, I would say that Leffen and Mew2king are probably the 2 players that have the most weird Mayhem rankings. Like I would say in 2014, Leffen probably should have been ranked 5th instead of 6th. And then in 2015, for sure, he should have been ranked 2nd instead of 3rd. But then in 2019, Leffen probably should have been ranked... No, he should have gotten ranked 3rd instead of 2nd. So Leffen often ends up in like weird places on the Mayhem. I'm not sure why, but I guess this shows the issue with subjective rankings. I mean, of course, like you could argue that I'm wrong on all 3Ds as well and say that I'm subjective. And I mean, technically, you would be right. It is my subjective opinion. But trying to think about it as objectively as possible, I feel like people should come to the same conclusion. But maybe I'm biased. It'll be interesting to see someone like really break down all the data and, try to make pros and cons for both sides. But yeah.
As I said before, Ken, when I mentioned Ken, Chu, Azen, Shondu and stuff, they all start around the same time period. Tournament Go, August of 2003, Ken won that tourney, and then he was pretty much considered the best in the world for the next 3 years after that. I would say from August 2003 until August of 2006, that 36-month time period, I would say he was the best overall player. So he had 36 months of constant number 1. And obviously, like, that should be heavily rewarded. He was probably the best slightly before that too, although that probably doesn't matter as much. During the end of 06, PC Chris, KDJ, and myself were becoming better than him, but you can't count out 36 months of doing really well. Like, that's really, really good. So obviously he's going to be on my top 5. And then after that, I would probably say...
Alright, so some people might put Ken as 4th. Some people might put Ken as 5th. It's between those two placements. Ken had longer time as number 1 than Mew2king, but a way shorter legacy. And he didn't compete in the toughest era by any means. So I mean, you can make a case for Mew2king above. I probably at this point would put Mew2king above as well. But I could see a case for Ken. Like, if someone put Ken above, I wouldn't be like, it's necessarily wrong. People probably will disagree with this. But one thing that makes me feel more confident about Ken being number one in the world, when he competed compared to Mew2king and Mango, like before Genesis 1, was that Ken actually went outside of the US to compete. He did go to Japan, and he won a very, very stacked tournament in Japan. And some people might say it was just one tournament, but to me, I feel like that should count for something. A lot of people like have always been that, but if you win in the US, you're automatically the best. But the thing is, even if that's like true in Melee these days, it's nothing that guaranteed that was the case back in the day. You had like really good Japanese players. You had great European players too. Then you have someone like Javi. Javi, for people that don't know, is a Mexican player. And his first tournament in the US was in 2012 when he got 4th place, beating PPMD, Hacks, and so on. But Javi was like really good back in 06 already. And if you look at his like stuff from like 05 or 6 or whenever it was, it looked really impressive for his time. So imagine that 6-year time period, maybe even 7, he got no chances of going to the US, and he could still get 4th at his first super major. So we proved that I'm not only the best in the US, but I'm the best in the world. I feel like Mango and Mew2king, and of course it could be like money, it could be, not allowed to, travel, outside of the US. So I'm not really going to like blame them in that sense, but I feel like Ken's position as number 1, in my eyes, was more guaranteed. While I would say Mew2king and Mango, prior to like, the Genesis 1 era and that time period after, I would say they were the best in the US and most likely the world, but we actually will never know that for sure. Someone like Amsa, European Amsa, he legit might have been the best in the world in like 07, 08. He might have been. Like, a lot of people don't know this, but when I traveled to Genesis 1, a lot of people started giving me, props afterwards, but they were like, but no one else in Europe is, very good. And I told them that I believe if Amsa goes to the US and he's like in practice, he will get top 3. And people were like, no, like that's not going to happen. And then, European Amsa, he was like the best in Europe between summer of 06 until like April 2009 when I dethroned him. But then, like, when I dethroned him, he was beyond rusty because he hadn't really played Melee for about a year. So he was super rusty. Like, he was actually way worse in 09 than he was in 08. And just before Pound 4, pretty much, it was like 2 months before Pound 4, then he got back into shape again. He still couldn't beat me at that tournament in Europe, because I had improved a lot. But then I was like, all right, Amsa is like back. And then at Pound 4, I was like, I believe Amsa will get like minimum top 5, but top 3 possibly. And he actually got top 3 beating me that tournament. And in friendlies, I know it's friendlies, but when he played like Mango and stuff, he was doing like really good. Not only with Sheik, but also with Marth in some of these games. So, and that was Amsa's like second tournament back in shape in like 2 years. So if he already was like, if he was that good in the early era, it should more be referred to the best in said country or said continent. Because besides Ken, that actually, went an extra step to prove himself as the best, no other player did that. No other player did that. So that's my opinion. And I know some people will disagree and be like, well, the US is what matters. But I feel like the US hadn't earned that right. These days, if you don't go to the US, Melee is established to the point where now you have to prove yourself in the US. But before then, it was like, no, like, you guys haven't done anything to earn this, like, privilege. But these days, for sure, they have. That's just how it is. With that said, I wish more people traveled outside of the US too, but it was very, very, it was very different back then. And you could see this in things like Brawl and stuff as well, when Japanese players started going over to the US. It wasn't as clear-cut as a lot of people made it out to seem.
I would say myself is number 4. So for my career, I started February 2005. I became ranked considered one of the top 6 in the world during the year 2006. I pretty much attended.
Toughest era of Melee. I'm biased, but I said this earlier, but I think between 2014 up until I retired. Like, yeah, I'm biased, but like, I think after I retired, like, Mew2king's started playing less, Ultimate came out shortly after, Plop and Leffen started playing way less. Like, you have some players, of course, like Sane, IFDW and stuff that is improving, but it's like a lot of like the top players either don't play or play significantly less. I personally feel like it's very exaggerated how much everyone improved. Like, for the most part, like, I haven't even played Melee that much, and at Summit, I actually didn't feel like pretty much anything have changed. Like, Sane and IBDW has gotten like a lot better, but for the most part, it's like a lot of people that watch Melee, they overvalue how crazy the improvement ratio is. The better you are, the harder it is to like keep improving. You improve by like baby steps, but each of those baby steps are of course harder to take than a baby step when you're a bad player, because you have so much to improve on. But the better you get, the harder it is to improve. So it's only natural that the improvement goes like slower and slower the more optimized the game becomes. And you can see this with like, let's take someone like Fiction. He was playing a lot in like 2014 and stuff, and a bit in 2015 too, I believe. And he was like top 15 or something. He pretty much stops playing for like a few years, 2-3 years. He comes back and pretty quickly he's back to top 10. It's not that the game has changed that much. It's a lot of people that either say it because they think it's the case, or maybe some people try to hype it up. But I think people like me and Fiction kind of like, yeah.
I usually got between somewhere as high as like 2nd to 7th at these super majors. Anywhere between 2nd to 7th for like almost every single time. So that's pretty good. I was considered the best Fox that year. I became the best in the world. I proved that I was the best in the world starting at the beginning of 07 and consistently throughout the entire year. But I think I was actually the best by the very end of 06. But I'm not gonna. For record's sake, let's say early 07 and onwards, because that's when I officially was able to prove it. So I became best in 07 for the whole year basically, and then 2008, besides losing to Mango once, I destroyed everybody else, and then I won every single opportunity in 2008. Back during that time period, me and Mango both agreed that I was still the best in 08, and then we both agreed that he was the best in 09. So I was actually there, and this is like my whole life, so I know the history really well because it's my own life. Anyway, so I was the best for 2 years. So all of 07 and all of 08, let's say 24 months. Not as much as Ken, but I have some other good things, and that's the fact that I've been a top 6 player for the next like 12 years or so after that. So I've been considered anywhere between 1st to 6th, starting as early as 2006, ending when I stopped playing the game when Armada retired after SmashCon 2018 in August of 2018. So that's a 12-month time period where I was ranked top 6, and then I stopped playing and I came back strong and still proved I had the top-level skills. I was ranked months, I'd say October, November, and December.
That looked so stupid.
I had the best results of anybody, and if there was like a summer 2013 rankings back then, because it was just 2013 ranked 3-2 at the next several.
Yeah, like, I mean, I can see Mew2king's point here. Like, to be fair, in 2013, I think I should not even have been ranked due to, like, stopping playing the game for a year. But even if I didn't, like, I feel like a lot of people don't understand, like, how do you say? Understand the struggle going from Europe to the US, or technically vice versa. Like, even when I was, like, active in those, like, earlier years, I went to, like, 1 or 2 super majors a year, because paying out of pocket as a, like, 16-year-old kid, it was, like, crazy hard, right? But I still did it, like, once or twice a year. So it's like, in 2013, I did win 1, and then even as retired and, like, not playing the game for, like, 6 months pretty much, I still got 4th. So it's like, I can see Mew2king's point. It's just like, this is like also an issue with like a lot of like the early era before Melee became more esport. Esport teams started picking up players. People could compete more. It was more tournaments, period. Like before 2014, that always will remain an issue, that it was so few big tournaments.
So I was doing really well versus everybody, and at that point Armada was also retired, and he thought I was the best then. I don't think I had quite as strong of an early 2014 as PPMD, or maybe even also Mango, but I had a really good first half of the year in 2014 in addition to my really strong late 2015. So that was
that DI.
2007
No DI.
and 8, where I think I was the best, and then a several month time period during late 2013, early 2014. At least late 2013, where I came back and showed it. Then in 2018, I came back and won Summit 6. Obviously, these aren't as long of a time periods, but when you consider the longevity, I feel like being a top 6 player for 12 to 13 years is like really, like during every single time period, I feel like that should be like, I feel like that's important. Besides that, I feel like being the best Sheik for like 8-9 years and best Mar for like 11-12 years, I feel like that should hold weight too, because a lot of people that was very when it comes to like influence, like all-time influence, and people copying off you and making it their goal or beat you and all that other stuff I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I feel like that type of stuff is important too. Now for the top 3, like these are obviously the top 3.
Objective how you value different things, but yeah, of course. I'm probably a bit biased here, but I feel like overall that point is a bit too overvalued. Like, especially in a game like Melee, where so much of the game is, revolving around the US, right? It's very unlikely that a player from Europe would ever have, like, as much of an impact in that sense, due to, like, how rooting culture normally works. If you look at any professional like sport, like regular sport and stuff like that, and I'm more than sure that it applies to esport too, most people end up rooting for teams, countries that they can relate to more. Like, I'm no exception. Like, let's say it's a World Cup in football. Of course I'm rooting for Sweden because I am from Sweden. Or if it comes to like club teams, I root for a team from Gothenburg because, this is where I grow up. This is very likely the case, which is why I feel like something like influence, especially when like so much of the scene is, around one country. I feel like it, like, by nature, like, it's like you get a huge boost by random luck, if you want to call it that, for, being born in, said country. I personally think, like, especially when a game is like so having so much focus on one country, I feel like it's overall a very overvalued point, in my opinion. Of course, it can be exceptions to this rule, but I think no one can deny the fact that it helps. It doesn't necessarily, it's like 100% born here equals this, born there equals that. But I think, like, it very clearly has a higher chance of, like, being the case.
Kind of want to tie the next two, but if I had to pick, so I'm just going to explain it all at once because it's easier. The top 3 is Armada first, Mango second, and HBox third. The reason I decide on that, like, I feel like it's super close, and honestly, if I could tie them, I would just tie Mango and HBox right now. I would literally just make it an exact tie. But if I was forced to pick an order...
Yeah, I mean, Mango and Hungerbox is honestly really close. This is like one of the tougher ones. I would say this top 10 list, Plop Asin, Mew2king Ken, and Hungerbox Mango. That's like the 3 toughest decisions to make. Everyone else on the list, I would say, is like, it's not too much of a debate, in my opinion, at least. But yeah, those three are pretty hard. Like, before we start listening to Mew2king's reasoning, Hungerbox, like, obviously been better than Mango in, like, the more recent years. But I believe Mango has been ranked higher more years than Hungerbox total. And despite having way less... How do you say? I don't want to say this in, like... How do you say, a disrespectful way? But when Mango was better than Hungerbox, you didn't get as many chances to, like, farm tournaments and farm set wins. And the thing is, of course, like, in one way it's more impressive to win, like, when, like, it's more tournaments and stuff around, but I feel like it should still be remembered. Like, hypothetically, say you win for 10 years straight and it's like 3 big tournaments each of those years. Like, not necessarily super major, but like 3 big tournaments a year. And you win all of them against one person, so you have 30 tournaments. And then one year that game, like much more tournaments comes around. The competitiveness doesn't necessarily get that much higher, but like the structure and like the amount of tournaments are a lot more. So now it's 30 tournaments in 1 year. Then in 1 year, we can pretty much make up for a decade. So I feel like that's also things people don't really think about enough. Like, sure, I would say 1 year, like, I would say, like, 2018.
Xbox, and my reasoning is because, so Mango was, he was better than Xbox during the year 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I'm not really sure because, like, there was no rankings and it was all over the place. And then he was better in 2013 and 14.
Nah, like, in 2010, Mango basically stopped playing after Pound 4. He won Pound 4 very decisively against Hungrybox 2. So, I mean, at least early 2010, he was better. Then he didn't start playing until Genesis 2, which was summer 2011. And from that point until, like, EVO 2015, he was better too. So it was basically from, like, 07 up to early 2010, he was better. Taking a break, and then you can say whatever you want, but that's the case. Then in that, like, year and a half time period, Mango didn't really play. He came back, and he was better from summer 2011, from the first tournament back, until EVO 2015. And then since EVO 2015, Hungrybox have been better. So, yeah.
And then probably the beginning of 2015. During 2015, Xbox became better, and then he was winning from then until now. So it was like the same amount of years, more or less. But then also, I think Mango pioneered more characters. Like, he was the best Puff before Xbox, and then he pretty much led the Puff meta, and then he pretty much led the Falco meta for quite a while, and then he led the Fox meta, winning 2 Evos with his Fox. So it's pretty much the tiebreaker. I use the tiebreaker. Like, results in what you've accomplished is obviously like the most important thing. But if in a case this close, I use the tiebreaker in the sense that Mango pioneered more characters and had more influence as a result. So I feel like that's why I would barely give him that edge. But yeah, it's extremely debatable, and some people might even think Xbox could be as high as first. So, as I said,
I mean, I'm biased, but I honestly think it's not close. I honestly think it's not close for first. I think it's very close between Mango and Hungrybox for second. But I don't think it's close for first. But let's watch until Mew2king starts talking about me.
Top 3, extremely close, extremely debatable. I think Xbox and Mango could be first, second, or third, and Armada has to be either first or second. So, as I said, with Mango, I explained with Xbox, he basically pioneered more characters, and he became the best in the world starting, I would say, me and Mango both agreed that he was the best starting in 09. And then he pretty much held it up until 2014 with inconsistencies around 2010, 11, 12. Now we have number 1. I'd say Armada is the best of all.
All right. So, yeah, okay. Before we start listening to Mew2king's reasoning on me, yeah, as I said, I honestly don't think it's close. Some people might be like, oh, like you're so cocky, or you're biased, but I honestly don't think it's close. And let me explain why. So if you compare my legacy to Hungrybox, which is what Mew2king kind of compared at the end there, I was better in 09. In 2010, Hungrybox was better than me. So me 09, Hungrybox 2010, I was better in 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and half of 2017. And then Hungrybox was better second half of 2017. And then in 2018, up until I retired, I think I was better. It's very close, but I think in 2018, when I stopped playing, I was better. If you actually look at the data, that was like 5-1 head-to-head. Hungrybox did have head-to-head better against... He did better than me at Low Tier City, but I did better there. No, he did better at Low Tier City and Genesis. But I did better at Summit, Smash and Splash, which is like a 19-month time period. If you take that 19-month time period it's actually really hard to say who was better than me in Hungerbox. I know a lot of people will default to saying Hungerbox for sure because he was number one in 2017, and then he became number one in 2018 as well. And that was more like, how do you say, the case got strong like after I retired. But if you take that 19-month time period, so we both entered 5 super majors. We entered 5 super majors. I won 2, Hungerbox won 1, Leffen won 1, and Plop won 1. So in super majors, it was 2-1 in my favor. Grand finals appearances, I made 3 grand finals appearances. So besides winning Genesis and Evo 2017, I also got second at Evo 2018. And Hungerbox, he got second at Genesis when Plop won, right? And then he won Big House at the end of 2017. So in Super Major wins, I had more, 2-1. And in Grand Finals appearances, I had 3-2. And then average placement, I had lower. I got fourth. I got fourth twice. So the 2 times I didn't make Grands, I got fourth. And Hungerbox also got fourth twice, I believe. He got fourth at the Genesis I won, and he got fourth at the Evo when Leffen won. And then he got a third as well at Evo 2017 when I won. So I had more Super Major wins, more Grand Finals appearances, and better average placement across a 19-month time period when people guarantee say that Hungerbox is clearly better than me. So I personally think it's wrong, and this is not me saying like, or me trying to disrespect Hungerbox's like legacy, because I think Hungerbox is an amazing player, and he clearly deserved to be rank 1 in 2017. And in 2018, he still deserved it, obviously. And of course, you can always like, oh, what would overall or head-to-head against the top 6, I think is relatively similar. I had the head-to-head over that 19-month time period by 2 sets more. He had better against Leffen than I did. I don't really remember like Mango, Mew2king, and Plop on top of my head. And then tournaments that we both entered in this 19-month time period, I believe I won and outplaced Hungerbox more than vice versa. I obviously lost to less top 6 members in that time period as well. Hungerbox, to be fair, entered more tournaments, which should be taken into consideration. But yeah. Like, yeah. I feel like I honestly like Super Major wins. So even with like multiple Super Majors post my retirement, which of course take away a huge threat for winning, right? Because in my career, I think I entered 22 or 23 Super Majors. And I made Grand Finals like 16 times or something. So it's like 2/3, over 2/3 I made Grand Finals. And I never placed below 4th at a single Super Major. I got 4th like 5 times or something. Like, I got 4th at an Evo. I got 4th at like 2 Big Houses. I got 4th at a Genesis. And it was like another 4th, I believe. But I never got below 4th. I think it was like 5 4th places, 1/3, and like 8 each for 2nd and 1st. And Hungerbox have like 1 9th, quite a few 5th places, a 7th place. And then, of course, like a lot of like wins and 2nd places and 3rd as well in that time period. I believe from SmashCon to a year later, around, it was like a friend of mine told me this stat randomly. He said like, I believe I might misremember a month or 2 here, but I believe it was from SmashCon 2018 to a year later, Hungerbox lost to 10 players in that 1 year. And from Genesis 1 to SmashCon 2018, I lost to 9. And sure, you could argue that like, oh, but it's more tournaments, but like that 1 year, is it really like harder? Like, is it harder to avoid losses to 10 players in that 1 year than it was in like basically a decade prior? And then, yeah, I do have a winning record against the entire top 6 and significant margin against some of them. It's relatively even against like Mango, but even then I have a winning record. Against Hungerbox, I believe it's like 33-19 or something like that. So, yeah. I know some people will be like saying that, oh, that's like cocky or whatever, but that's my true opinion. It's my true opinion. I do heavily respect Mango and Hungrybox's legacies, and we had many amazing sets over the years. Both sets I won, and both sets that they beat me. It's a lot of like Melee history there. So I really respect them as competitors, and I consider us like friends. But yeah, I do think people have way too much recency bias. Way too much recency bias, and even if you do recency bias, as I just explained, I believe that 19-month time period, if you look at that 19 months, it's actually really hard to say if I was actually like worse than Hungrybox necessarily. If I was, it's like by the tiniest of margins. And if I was not, if you take the entire 19 month, then if I was better, it's also by the tiniest of margins. But it can clearly be a case made for it. While in like 2015 and 16, when I was ranked 1, even if you take years separately or together, I feel like it's no debate whatsoever. And also like one last stat that a lot of people don't know about that I think is very impressive, but very few people know about it. From Big House 4, when I got 4th, I lost to Left-Handed Mango that tournament. But after that tournament, I got 2nd at Apex 2015, and I made Grand Finals at every Super Major until Big House 7. Until EVO 2017, which is like basically a 3-year time period, I made Grand Finals at every single Super Major. Like, that's pretty 08, when I was like honestly not even 15 years old. I was like almost 15. And then I have 1-0 losing record to Science Spectre, but it was 0.9 damage ratio. And again, some people probably will say that's John's, but it actually does change a lot. It does change a lot. So, yeah, people can value it how much or little they want, but truth of the story is that it was 0.9. Which changed a lot, especially when you play against characters with knockdowns, because it's all about getting the knockdown. And on 0.9, that changes a lot. So, yeah. But yeah, let's listen to Mew2king's reasoning.
All time, me and him actually started the same day. Fun fact: I started February 14th, 2005, and he started like it was a few, as I think it was like less than a full day earlier, but in Europe time.
Oh yeah, no, it was actually one day before. One day before, but yeah, pretty much accurate. Pretty much accurate. It's funny though. We started the same weekend.
The first 4 years, but he had such a strong 2009 until 2013. That 9-year career, like the middle of 2009 until middle of 2018, for 9 years straight, where his only losses were to the top 6 players, 1 set to Silent Spectre and a 2 out of 3, which was, by the way, a 0.9 damage ratio by accident, and then to Swedish Delight in another 2 out of 3 at the EVO 2018. So pretty much that level of.
Oh yeah, I lost the best of 5 to European AMSA as well. So yeah, that's the 9 people that we talked about. It was 9 people, and yeah, European AMSA. He was the only person besides the top 6 members, like Plop Leffen and the Gods. Besides, yeah, the Gods, Plop Leffen, European AMSA was the only one that ever took a best of 5 from me. No American player that was in top 6 ever took a best of 5 from me. I lost, yeah, 2 best of 3s, 0.9 to Science Spectre, and then 1 set to Swedish at EVO. So yeah, the top 6 and European AMSA were the only players to ever take a best of 5 from Genesis 1. Of course, prior to Genesis 1, I did lose to some players. But yeah.
Consistency, like when you combine his dominance and his consistency, that combination is just like unchallenged. Better like years down the line, but I don't think it will happen soon. So yeah, that's my list. That's pretty much my top 11 of who I think the best all-time Melee players are, starting the timeline around, I'd say around 2000 agreements. Like some people be slightly higher or lower.
Yeah, cheer tips. Thank you for 2 months.
This is too far off. I think when you consider my explanations, and like you got to remember, it's not just I'm assigning this number to you. It's like, okay, well, these are really close, and here's why this is my tiebreaker. It doesn't necessarily have to match your logic. Yeah, that's pretty much my logic, and that's who I think the top 10, well, top 11 are of all time, I'd say in order. So, Thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Hit the bell, which is next to subscribe, so you get notifications. And let me know what you think in the comments below. What is your top 10, top 11? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, no, in general, yeah. For the most part, I agree. I probably would put, yeah, as we said earlier, I'll put Plop above Asin. But besides that, Hungrybox Mango, like, it's hard to say there too. You could make a very clear case for either one of them. So I'll let that one be undecided without looking more at the data. Yeah, that's my opinion. But so overall, I agree with the ranking. It was like a few things that I personally think Mew2king got wrong, but for the most part, heavily agree. Is good, you know, insight to a lot of these players as well. But yeah, like, everyone, please let me know what you guys think. How would you put the top 10? Is it any of my subjective opinions that you disagree with, and if so, which ones? But yeah, no, it's a cool video, cool watch. I enjoyed it.